Hey, good morning. Happy Sunday to everybody. Tim from Alpha Wolf Trading coming at you with this week's list of stocks to watch for trading and investing and a sector breakdown. So I'm short on time this weekend after doing all my research yesterday. Today I have a lot going on. So I'm just going to do one video, the full video of all the stocks to watch for trading and investing and the sector breakdown. I'm going to try not to make this too long of a video, so I'm just going to hop right into this. Let's just go through the sectors really quickly. IBB has had an amazing run. We do have a gap that could potentially fill on the IBB. We are coming up into a potential double top. We'll see how IBB reacts this week at this area of potential price resistance. But we have had a pretty big run in a short period of time. So to see this find some resistance here and at the very least consolidate, maybe even pull back a little bit, wouldn't be a big shock. IWM has been consolidating. We came up, we tested trend line resistance, we pulled back, tested trend line resistance. We have made a little bit of a lower high in the short term here. What we don't want to see is come down and make a lower low. But we'll see how this plays out. We're just kind of flagging out and consolidating. IWM still looks decent as we remain in an uptrend, and we could have a little cup with handle going on there on the IWM. We'll have to see how this plays out as well. Big week ahead for earnings, and before I should have started there actually. So let's take a look at that real quick here. Hold on a second. Loading, loading, loading. All right, so big week with earnings, right? We've got some big tech names. We've got financials, big financials. Financials got some earnings. Were a little disappointing. Didn't react well. One of the weakest looking sectors out there, and also one of the most talked about as being undervalued. But things that are undervalued can get more undervalued. So for whatever reason, the financials are not really responding all that great. We've got Netflix, which is actually on the list of stocks to watch. Some downgrades came out at the end of the week last week. We'll see if those wind up being accurate. That can be a pretty volatile stock. I mean, it's had some steep declines on earnings misses. Hasn't had very many of them, but when it has, it's had some steep declines. And that could present either a short opportunity or we may, if they crush it, you could get a big gap up and move higher. So we'll have to see how that plays out. We've got some big pharma, Johnson & Johnson, big ruling against them last week. It's been an underperformer, but healthcare and big pharma has actually been coming back. We'll see that. We'll look at that in a second. Rails, we've got CSX, Canadian Pacific, Union Pacific, all reporting this week. That could be an interesting space. There's a name in there that I like that's on the or in that sector that's on the list of stocks to watch this week. We've got IBM, American Express, United Rentals. I think is an interesting one. Microsoft, and then of course the industrials. We've got GE, we've got Honeywell, Schlumberger, Baker Hughes. We've got a lot going on with earnings. So there's no doubt going to be some earnings movers, and then potential sympathy plays to those movers. So big week ahead, and we'll see how it plays out. But let's take a look at the sectors now and see which ones we want to keep a pretty close eye on. IYT. Look, it kind of looks like we're bear flagging here. It did manage to hold this little trend line as potential support. We're sitting on top of, I believe that is the 200-day. And we're trying to hold on to that. We're trying to maintain the 200-day. We'll see how transportation, airlines, I think we got a couple of airlines that report this week too. I'm not sure when. But airlines got hit a little bit last week. Guidance from one of the airlines not great. We'll see how that plays out. SMH, we have made a lower high here. We're trying to hold on to the 200-day moving average. And actually, I think we're flirting with the 50-day as well. A sector has been under a little bit of pressure recently, but it's still in an uptrend, and I think we're probably waiting on earnings from some names in that space. I would say it's probably one of my least favorite sectors to keep an eye on, at least for this week. The SPY, we are right at price resistance. We did manage to take out this little trend line here, and we're right at price resistance. Let's see how that plays out next week. If this acts as resistance, we get a pullback. Aerospace and defense has had a really, really nice move off of the 200-day moving average. Nice bounce, but now we're coming back up into price resistance. The one thing I will say is we have an aerospace defense show happening this week in France that generated about 128 billion in orders last year. So we could see some orders being announced from that event. The question is whether or not the stocks have already had their move in anticipation of those orders. So some of them have had very nice bounces, but they've moved quite a bit in a very short period of time. We'll see how it plays out next week. There's a couple of aerospace defense names that I am keeping an eye on, and some that I would like to see pull back to support to get in for a long-term hold consideration. All right, so aerospace defense I think is one to keep an eye on next week. Energy has been consolidating right here around the 50-day moving average, kind of holding on to this trend line. Energy, a lot of good looking setups in that space. My question is if we're just going to maybe chop around and consolidate for a bit. I'm just wondering if the easy money has already been made in energy. But there are still some names out there that I like that I'm keeping an eye on. Financials, like I said, we had a pop in anticipation of the earnings and then pulled back, and we're at this area of potential price support. We'll see what happens with financials next week. Goldman Sachs and all these other guys reporting, but financials probably look big thick stocks. Typically more swing long-term hold type plays. If we break down between this 26 area in financials, probably not going to be a good thing for financials. I would be cautious of that sector. Basically, they're guilty till proven innocent. Industrials, just below the 50-day, below the 200-day. We've got a death cross, 50 breaking below the 200. We did get a little bit of a bounce in the last week here. I still think this is a sector that is guilty till proven innocent, especially over all this trade war stuff. So, they get it, I think, impacted the most. So that would be a sector that I would be somewhat cautious of. Consumer discretionary, looking pretty good. Flirting with price resistance here, flirting with this trend line, flirting with all-time highs. Consumer discretionary does look good. I don't know what the catalyst will be to get us through this next week, through this trend line. This may consolidate a bit, pull back. XOP, another energy ETF. Again, kind of in consolidation mode. I don't think we're going to see, in my view, I don't think we're going to see a huge pop up, and I don't think we're going to see a huge pop down. I think we might just consolidate for a while. And then XRT retail came up into resistance, pulling back. Could have a potential head and shoulders here, little head and shoulders pattern going right there. I don't like trading retail for whatever reason. It hasn't been good for me, but the sector looks decent. I think we're probably going to be waiting on earnings, maybe chopping around a little bit. The other thing though is we have Amazon Prime Day, right? So you got Amazon Prime Day, that could be big. Walmart. I think the other retailers are coming out and running specials on the same day, so could be interesting for retail in general. We'll see how that plays out. definitely worth at least having on the radar. All right, so let's hop right into the list of stocks to watch. Amazon, they, like I said, it's got Prime Day coming. We are, maybe Amazon moved ahead of Prime Day, right? I mean, I don't know how much more of a lift we could get. We have a candle that is completely out of the upper Bollinger Band. So, and we're up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days in a row. Let's see. Last time we were up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 days in a row, and then pulled back a little bit. But it's been, look, Amazon's been a beast without a doubt. But it's starting to look a little bit parabolic here. So I would be careful with Amazon, even if they wind up reporting some fantastic numbers. CLPS. This is a big popper that has been in consolidation mode. Pulled back the 20-day, had a little pop on Friday. This thing has only got 3.3 million shares in the float. Traded 889,000 shares on Friday. Flirting with a $15 roll. Potential red to green move on this one. It's got some range too. So maybe what we look for here is a pullback down to about 13.50 or so. See if that holds a support for a bounce, and maybe we go back up and test that high around $17. Worth keeping an eye on for potential day trading opportunity. SPCB had a nice little pop on Friday, broke back above the 50-day. These guys have earnings, I think. Well, let's not think. Let me take a look. They have earnings Monday morning, pre-market. So, I think they gave guidance here, or this was an order or something. They might have given guidance there. Big pop right into the 100 EMA and then pulled back to the 20-day and bounced, right? So maybe what we look for, if these guys report a good number and they don't gap up to like some ridiculous value, gap up too big, maybe what we look for is a little red to green action. Maybe we pull back to $2, test that as support. It depends on what their guidance is, but we've got some resistance probably in the 250 to 260 range. Some potential price resistance may come all the way back up and test the $3 holla 200-day moving average. So this has got 9.3 million shares in the float. And worth keeping an eye on this one, maybe for a day trading opportunity, possibly even a swing. If they report a big number, maybe what you wait for is the pullback, right? So you get the pop, you look for consolidation, pullback, and maybe it becomes a swing or long-term hold consideration on a trend reversal. So we've been in a downward trend for quite a while. So worth at least keeping an eye on SPCB. YRIV, great looking setup on the daily. Don't know when these guys report earnings, and we are in that time now. You need to make sure these guys don't have some catalyst right here on the horizon. Make sure you check to see when earnings might be on any of these plays. But nice consolidation right here around the 20-day. Got a little bit of a pop with some volume on Friday. It had a huge run. Now maybe looking for it to try and take out this 1260 area. 77 million shares in the float. And this is an area of price resistance. $13, a break over $13. I think potentially maybe you get a test up into the $16 area. So worth keeping an eye on YRIV. TPIV, it's a biotech name that had a big pop, consolidating, just reclaimed the 20-day on Friday, closed in the upper portion of this candle, took out this trend line. Looking for a potential red to green move on this one. Pull back to $10 as support, and then maybe go up and test somewhere in the $11.50. Potentially even come back up and test the $13 area. TPIV looking pretty good. I like the uptrend in it. 50-day moving average is sloping higher. RSI stochastic starting to curl up. Pretty good looking setup there in TPIV, and decent volume on Friday. 261,000 shares, only 7.9 million shares in the float. Worth keeping an eye on that one. ENSV, one of the oil and gas names, small floater, only 40 million shares in the float. Got a little bit of volume on Friday. Traded 470,000 shares. It's been kind of consolidating right here around the 50-day, the 20-day moving average. Got a little bit of a pop, taking out this trend line. Looking for a potential red to green on this one. Now, it's a thin stock. This could be a swing or a day trading opportunity for me. Let's see, if it gets some real good volume. I think where I would like to take it is on a pullback to about $1.17 or maybe even $1.17, $1.15, somewhere in that area. Put my stop maybe just below $1. But worth keeping an eye on. ENSV. TGA was one that put out a couple of weeks ago. Had this set up here and has had a huge run. So there are, within that space, there's some nice movers, and that ENSV might be one that can give us a nice move like that as well. So worth keeping an eye on that one. LONE, another oil and gas play that had a beautiful run, been kind of riding the 20-day moving average. Decent volume pop on Friday, 375,000 shares. Has only got 15.9 million shares in the float. Great looking setup here, and I love round number rolls. Take out the $9 holla. I think potentially we could get a test up into about $10 before we find some price resistance there, potential price resistance, and maybe even hop up into the 1150 area. Looks like there's been some accumulation going on in this name, so worth keeping an eye on LONE, potentially for a day trade or swing. I can't remember who it was. I think it's Kerrisdale that I think put a $150 price target on this thing, based off a 5G rollout. And then there was some news last week about FTC looking at Telestat Partners. I can't remember what the news was. C-band video data transmission support accelerated 5G rollout. Yeah, I saw this 5G rollout, big deal for them. And this had an amazing run. Been in consolidation mode now, trying to take out the $21 holla. Back this out to the weekly time frame. And this is a pretty big area of resistance. You take that out, and I think we go up and test that 2450, which is all-time highs. So definitely look like we're heading in that direction. Could be a swing. Now this is the second day of the move. Might have one more day in it, 3-day move, and then you get a little bit of pullback or consolidation, but could pull back to this 21 area and have that be support, right? Well, it was resistance becomes support. I think it's worth keeping an eye on this one, on this name. Maybe you look for a red to green, pull back to around 1950 or so as an entry for a little short-term swing, or you could take this maybe as a starter for a long-term hold consideration. But I is looking pretty tough. NSTG, nanostring technology, biotech name, big run, closed the gap. It's been kind of consolidating here, pulled back a little bit, test the 50-day moving average, and then bounced right off of that. You're basically filled the gap here. We could pull back. This is the second day of the move. Could be a little day trading opportunity in there. It's only got 21.5 million shares in the float. Nice volume on Friday. Stochastics curling up. MACD histo looking like it's going to go positive. It could get some more follow through in this NSTG, and maybe we get up into around the 1660 area. and that's where we find some resistance. So that could be a decent target. Maybe 16.50, $16. That's a dollar move. Not too shabby. Worth keeping an eye on. NSTG for red to green, and then some follow through. CASM. So this is a pretty good looking setup on the daily. Now this has had a pretty big run. It's been consolidating, pretty thin name, but it looks like you got some accumulation going on here. Flirting with a $2 holla. Ideally for me, I would want to get this as close to the 50-day as possible. Maybe take a swing on this. If it takes out $2 with volume, potential day trading opportunity. Only 18.5 million shares in the float. Nice little uptrend we've got going on here. Like I said, ideally for me on a pullback to about 175, 170, that would be the spot I would like to get it for a swing. But on a break over 2, could be a day trading opportunity as well. Worth keeping an eye on. CASM. CVEO. Been watching this one. These guys had a nice contract announcement. Hasn't been. It's a conditional award and hasn't been totally confirmed yet. I imagine that when that is confirmed, maybe we get a nice move out of CVEO. Ideally, I'd like to get this one on a pullback to the 20-day, about $4. 20-day, 50-day, $4, $3.95. That'd be a great opportunity maybe for a swing or long-term hold consideration. If it takes out 460 with volume, could get a nice pop. Worth keeping an eye on CVEO for either a swing or a day trading opportunity with volume on a break over 460. SFS, this caught our attention in the chat room on Friday. Nice consolidation. It's only got 41.2 million shares in the float. Grocery store, Smart and Final. I mean, you got a little rounding bottom here, and now we're flagging out. Break over 6. I think maybe you get a 7 test up to the 200-day. You're probably going to find some resistance there. There's a gap to fill on the daily up to about $7.25. Maybe the ideal spot for this is to try and get it around $5.50. Put your stop, say, below $5.25, or maybe even put it below $5. Right? So you get it $5.50. You're looking for a 7 tag. Risk 50 cents to get $1.50. Pretty good risk reward on there. I like to look at SFS. I think it's worth having on the radar for trading opportunity. And here's my rail play. Look, if we get some good earnings out of CSX and Canadian Pacific and what's the other, Union Pacific, then maybe rail gets a nice little pop. And this is small float, 12.1 million shares in the float. Now the issue with this stock is it traded 27,000 shares on Friday. Very, very thin. Trades very thin. But if we take out $17 with some volume, this could get a pretty nice pop back up into maybe the $20 range is kind of what I'm thinking. There is a gap to fill up to about $18.25. We came close to filling that, but maybe we go back up, test. You find some resistance in the $18.25 to $19 area. You hold some for a lotto up into the 20 test. The other thing I like about this is the golden cross. We just had the 50-day cross above the 200-day. I like that quite a bit. We'll see if we get any kind of action off of rail next week. Roku looks fantastic. Is flirting with this $48. Actually broke over $48. Looking for some potential follow through in Roku. I know there's a lot of eyeballs on this one. I think maybe we get a pop up into the $52 area. Worth keeping an eye on that one. It's got 42.9 million shares in the float, and I think there's a pretty big short interest there as well. CPST, full disclosure, I own this. I picked some up, I think, in the $140 area. I had some news last week. This is in my long-term hold account. I'm building a position in it. If it were to pull back to $1.30, I would likely add $1.60 if we can take this area out with some conviction. maybe we get a pop back up into the 175, 190 area. It could be a scalp opportunity. I like this one more for a long-term hold consideration. I think this company's got some good stuff going on, and I think it's worth keeping an eye on. If it were to pull back to the, like I said, the 139 to 130 area, I could be looking to add to the position. But worth keeping an eye on CPST. And let's see, there was a director that bought 30,000 shares at $1.53 in June. So I like to see insider buys. That's part of the reason why I've gotten involved in the name, and I think it's worth keeping an eye on. RADA. So aerospace defense name, you got this event coming up in France, and this has been consolidating pretty nicely here. Worth keeping an eye on this one for a break over 310 with volume. This has only got 22.6 million shares in the float. They just announced a contract with the U.S. Army last week. I think RADA is setting up for potential continuation, and look at what we have coming potentially is we have a golden cross, the 50-day, looking to potentially cross above the 200-day. So nice looking setup there. Some decent news flow recently. Got an event coming up in France next week. Maybe they announce some orders. Worth keeping an eye on RADA for either a day trade or even potentially a swing. CRNT, full disclosure, I own this one as well. Got a big cup and handle going on here, right? Look at that big cup and handle, pulled back to the 50-day, bounced off of it. I'm looking for it to take out this trend line and take out that cup, all right? Take out the top of that cup eventually over 420. Everything's sloping higher, the 200-day, the 50-day. It's a good-looking, clean setup on the daily time frame. 64.7 million shares in the float. Like I said, I've got this for actually kind of a long-term hold. If this were to pull back to $3 in that area, that is where I would look to actually add to my position. Like I said, I like this one for long-term hold play. I think they benefit from 5G rollout as well. And last stock on my list is Netflix, right? So big pull on Friday off of those downgrades, pretty good volume. This thing has had some pretty significant pullbacks in the past when they've missed. It hasn't been very often, but when they do, it can have pretty decent pullbacks. So, it's looking a little parabolic if you look at the weekly, right? I mean, we've kind of gone a little bit parabolic here. So if they disappoint, we could see a pretty significant pullback. So worth keeping an eye on. Netflix, if we break below the 50-day, maybe what you start looking for there is, some short opportunities on bounces. We'll see. And then if they crush it, we could see this thing take out all-time highs. We'll have to see how it plays out, but worth keeping an eye on Netflix. Look, there's a lot of big names to keep an eye on next week with earnings. All right, so that's it. That's my whole video for this week. Good luck trading next week. Let's see what the earnings season brings, and I'll see you all next week.